Good evening.
Okay. Hello. If this is our first time meeting, I'm Kenny K here with Jeremy, and here we talk about faith, life, but mostly frivolities. And you're now listening to Small Talks Radio. So the question for today, or rather the topic, is tithing.
Give your money to
Yeah.
the
So
church. No questions asked. That's how we do things.
so my experience with tithing is something that I've always done since I was a child. Well, especially with all the allowances that I've got. But I usually, I mean, I never really had an income, or at least none of the income were. I It's kind of hard to say because the incomes or the money that I got, either it was more so of to cover what I had to pay for. It wasn't an income, so a lot of the times like allowances that would be given to me as if and when I helped out the family, at their family business or something like that, it's just to cover like insurances and stuff. So I had no money left over. So those times, it's kind
But are
of
you
hard.
saying that you had allowance and then that allowance ended up going back into the family anyway?
Well, okay, so I mean, when I did have an income, like when I worked for companies and stuff, I did tithe, but lot of uh, for most of my life, I worked with family. So when I got money, I didn't really get money as an income, but rather, uh, let's say like a gift in order for me to pay for certain expenses that I had that's recurring. So it wasn't anything that I could, spend freely on my own. For example, if I had to pay, like if I had like car insurance, then it was $200 a month. I would get
You're
$200.
right. Yeah, it all ends up going into that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Hmm.
So that's my experience with tithing in the beginning, I guess, or most of my life. But my views on tithing is a little different now than it was before.
Where's the threshold between now and
Right.
before?
So the tithing now. I mean, the more I dug into it and more I learned and studied, I guess this thing. So this soul thing we call Christianity is that tithing itself is not the way. With most churches, they ask you to tithe, and some churches actually even guilt people into tithing. At least not the church itself, or yeah, the church itself, the body, or the people, right? Not just the institution, but people would pressure other people to do it.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the times when the pamphlets or whatever they give out, they have names of people of the people that tithe, right? So it's like a social thing, and then it kind of shames people that don't do it, and you
Especially
know,
since you can write it off on your taxes.
well,
That's the point of the
yeah,
receipts.
that's another thing. But yeah, so I think over time it's one of those things that benefited the institution itself. So they mandated, and then they kept they. It's kind of like taxes, if you know what I mean. Um, I guess for I'm not an American, but the Boston Tea Party. You know what happened there, right?
Hmm.
I
They
think
get
it's
fed
one
up.
of those
So wait, are
things.
you talking about tithing in like the whole historical sense where this had gotten to where it was like a very legal thing and so Catholic Church indulgences and everything else that goes with that?
Okay, so I know the church needs to run, but this whole system of tithing, I think it's not biblical today for people to tithe that 10% that people have done, like the people of the Bible did.
You're
In
talking about like the religiously mandated 10% of
right,
your
right,
earnings.
to the Levites. So back in Old Testament days, where um, the rest of the tribes,
Mm-hmm.
got their crops and then they gave it to the Levites, right? So they can survive, and they can offer, and they had their small, I don't know what were they called, castles or something. And I mean the little they didn't farm, right? So that's what they used
Right.
to. So if so, my saying is that if tithing continued out today and we practice it now within our communities, then wouldn't all of those laws that were mandated to the Israelites back then? I mean, it's the same. It's the same type of law that people practiced back then, right? So if we were to practice those, I think it's kind of archaic, and I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, in general, that would be one among many Old Testament laws that we could probably demonstrate their irrelevance today. Not irrelevance in this in the broader philosophical sense, but to where if we follow them to a T, you're not going to get the results that you want, and that's not really what the church is built to do anyway.
Right. So my point is, it's generally like we held on to that because it's convenient for the institution itself.
Yeah, that would be something that I'd have to trace through history. But I mean, you mean convenient for like the authorities that were making money off of it, or convenient in like, well, 10% seems like a more or less acceptable standard?
I'm just saying that tithing has no biblical basis for people today.
So you mean like it's like mandating it though, where
Right.
it's like everybody has to give 10%. We're just laying down the law. If you're not giving 10%, then God's probably mad at you, and
Yeah.
certainly the pastor is as well.
I mean, yeah, for many people, I think a lot of people, if they can, they're willing to give more than 10%, and some people can't give more than 10%. Right? It depends on how much you earn and the proportion of your earnings, right? Like, in the Bible, they talk about a widower, that lady that had like 2 coins or something like that. That was more than, you know, that was a big, what do you call it?
You're like
Yeah, big portion of
100% offering.
it's all that she had, so it's like giving like literally 100% of what she had, right? And then also talks about people. I think there was another. I don't remember. I don't know if it was in Romans or something. It's like they were giving to the church in Jerusalem because they were struggling, and then like they were saying, and then people are, it's whatever people are. It's not under compulsion, and they were giving with joyful hearts, or I think Paul said, give with joyful hearts or something like that. But like it's not nothing is tied to the tithing 10% now. And I think when churches or people pressure other people to do it, or even though it might be, what do you call it, like passive aggressive sometimes, it's like, I think it's unhealthy for the church.
So then, just offhand, would you say that not just tithing per se, but like offering in general is something that really just has no place being a sermon topic?
The offering, I mean,
Ultimately, that's where I would draw the line, because
yeah.
like for the most part, I don't see that there are too many churches that are like, yeah, everybody needs to be paying 10%. You'd be in a really probably like a King James only, very fundamentalist church that's thinking we need to maintain this 10% all the time just because that's what God said to do.
So my thing is, it's an education thing, right? Because it's the way I understood tithing within my raising in the church and the family. I grew up with the wrong understanding of what tithing is. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it was just to have we should talk about it in the context that it actually applies to the church, because I mean, all things considered, people stop offering, the church stops existing, at least as a formalized
right. But
brick and mortar institution.
Yeah, no, but people are willing to give and donate and stuff like that, but like the way I understood it is like you had to do that, and it's not. I mean, I don't mind giving more than 10%, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't know, because I don't know. I'm not good with finances at the moment. Yeah, everything's up in the wire. I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, that is interesting. I feel like in Sunday school, I would have had like a worksheet or something that would have said, "Oh, you need to give 10% if you made $2 in allowance this week. How much do you give back to the church?" And like, there's even like a little offering plate for the Sunday school. I can't say I'm super on board with that. I don't think it's common by any means, and I don't know where I would have seen that, but it definitely doesn't seem out of character. So. But with that said, I mean, I can't think of anywhere that's like forcing it. unless you're with like a really older crowd and they're already, kind of like seated in these kinds of thoughts. And so when you bring up tithing for them, it's not just a matter of like, I'll follow the Old Testament rules. Maybe they've got a broader understanding of this type of stuff.
Okay,
but with
so
that said, I mean, we don't even have to go to Romans for that. You can go to Acts, and you've got this community that had built up where everybody's possessions just belong to everybody else in a sense.
oh, okay, yeah, that's what
What's
I mean.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I totally. I mean, I'm not saying like giving is a bad thing, but the way I understood it. Okay, so let's all put it in another sense. So basically, what I was taught, or at least what my family sometimes think, is that you give the 10%, so God will bless you.
Mm-hmm.
Type of thing, it's a retainer on God. Here's your 10%. Do what you have to do for me because I'm giving.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's not. I mean, the way I guess I grew up in, I think not just me, but I think a lot of people, they have misunderstanding of it just because it's kind of hard to say because I haven't totally conformed. I mean,
right. And it's not like you can go back and point at the one sermon that was like, oh yeah, this is where he said it. This is where he was like, oh, you better tithe. But you could tell that was the feeling of it. Really, most of the time when the Old Testament comes up, or I guess Christian morals, you end up with this feeling like, man, you better do this or you're like hellbound. This is what Jesus needs you to do, or you can't say that you're a Christian at all. And really, when it comes down to it, the Christian faith is not so rigid and law oriented. The whole point of this is you're not going to be able to live up to those kind of laws no matter what you do anyway. And tithing would be one among many of those things that I don't think that's not even something that we would maintain anyway. You do things out of love, and that's where offering ends up with this much more, I don't know, rounded idea of it, because you give what you can, you give what you feel like you ought to give. And yeah, it's harder to mandate. You can't like make the church survive on that by like raw willpower the way that you can, if you were to say tithing, then you can almost calculate, we've got these people in these income brackets, and so they'll make roughly this amount over the course of a year or a quarter or whatever. Then you can really predict it. But when you say, all right, well, we're dependent on the congregation to pay for us, and we're dependent on God to prod the congregation into this type of thing. Well, then you're definitely trusting God. You're trusting with like the whole institution as well. So, yeah, no, that's definitely something that needs to get cast down. That very rigid idea.
Yeah, that can get into a whole different topic of like church accounting, where how the funds get used, right? Because like, how does the church survive? Because like, I guess some of the expenses within the church are kind of what do you call it? Wow, I'm losing words here. Controversial, right? Some of the expenses that churches do.
Oh yeah, what they do with it once they get the money in. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I'm not. So what we talked about is I'm not that problem itself. It's not happening at the church that we're serving right now, but I have seen it in other churches in the past. That's why I was bringing it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
one of the churches that I left recently. I mean, not recently, but like in my life, their accounting's I don't know. It's kind of shady. They had like every 3 years they would like lease a new car for the pastor, and
yeah, sketchy stuff. Especially when you have like churches that are like getting so big that they're giving money back to like a whole convention, and then you've got this convention of churches that's all set up, and like I don't know how those are operated, but there's a lot of them, and definitely a lot of money goes through them because they fund some pretty huge stuff on it sometimes. But man, yeah, no, I don't know how any of that kind of stuff works. Although it is worth noting that there's also plenty of churches that are dying for offerings, and so the convention ends up sending them money. So this is dicey. I don't know how money flow works. And this probably goes into nonprofits in general. Because man, if you're not working for money, if it really is just a service that somebody thinks should exist, I mean, somebody's making money off of it. You've got like Goodwill and I think like Red Cross and other things that every now and again come under some critical fire, probably for good reasons. But now I'm way out of my depth at that point.
Mhm. So, if you want to, or you want me to do it?
Oh, are we cutting off? I think we've about hit it. It has been 15 minutes. Well, that's all the time we have today, folks. Until next time,
Yeah, if you want.
keep it saucy.
Well, so
That's the outro this
what
time.
time have you committed to?
Huh?
What
That was
time?
15 minutes. We've hit it. We're good.
No, no, no. What time have you committed to? So people, I have
We have committed to your time 9:45.
9:45.
9:45 every Monday evening. Mark your calendars. Mark your friends' calendars because this is hot stuff coming your way.